there's a lot of people in the Bitcoin media space that will never talk about this or what you just mentioned. And I think a lot of that is because a lot of money and effort has been put into specifically homogenizing media discourse in the Bitcoin space, because they want Bitcoiners as much as possible to be compliant, while Larry Fink and his ilk do what they want with Bitcoin and make it what they want it to be, so that people are content with number go up and sort of the Sailor-esque talking points that have gotten a lot of, a lot of people have heard those versus what you just mentioned, from example. There needs to be a cultural shift in Bitcoin in the opposite direction of what this Diego guy from Rootstock said.
As we all know, that Bitcoin's recent surge in popularity and value has caught the attention of financial giants like BlackRock, but investigative journalist Whitney Webb again warns that this development may not be cause for celebration. She believes we should be concerned about BlackRock's entry into the Bitcoin space, as this firm is known as the Trojan horse of centralization. Furthermore, she says that Bitcoin was created as a decentralized alternative to traditional finance, but BlackRock's involvement threatens to centralize control over a significant portion of the Bitcoin supply. This concentration of power goes against the core principles of Bitcoin's design. Also, there will now be a regulatory capture. Like with their immense influence, companies like BlackRock can shape regulations to their advantage. This could lead to a Bitcoin ecosystem that primarily benefits large institutions rather than individual users. But Webb's concerns extend beyond just Bitcoin. She warns of a broader agenda to tokenize real-world assets, with Bitcoin potentially serving as a gateway. By integrating Bitcoin into traditional financial systems, there's a risk of increased surveillance and control over transactions. This contradicts the privacy and freedom that many Bitcoin's advocates value. Additionally, the push for central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, and other forms of programmable money could be accelerated by Bitcoin's mainstream adoption. This technology could potentially allow for unprecedented control over how and when people can spend their money. Now let's listen to more clips of Whitney Webb from this podcast.
Like Mark and I have discussed before, they're trying to go about it the private sector route. Oh, okay, you guys aren't interested in programmable, surveillable money if it's emitted by the central bank. So if it's emitted by a private bank, maybe you will, right? But the other side of this is what's happening in places like Argentina right now, where people have lost so much of their purchasing power. So like before Milei came to power, I think the poverty rate was it was insanely high. I think it was something like 60%. And then Milei came into power and devalued the currency by 50%, which led to a massive loss in purchasing power for Argentinians on top of that. Now Argentinians are so desperate and are being told that they're undergoing quote unquote shock therapy designed by a JP Morgan guy, that they're doing WorldCoin. They're scanning their eyes in the Sam Altman orb for shitcoins and a cattle tag, a digital ID. And the idea is to have that be like your access to the internet, and using, these tokens and these stable coins, using Tether, using USDC, whatever supported by Mercado Libre's giant entity, Mercado Pago, which is also integrated with Brazil's biggest crypto exchange, Mercado Bitcoin, and then there's Ripio in the mix, which is partnered with all of these guys too. They're going to control all the rails that stuff runs on. And that's where people are running because their money has been so devalued and they have no alternative. And I think that's ultimately the goal, is to get people on programmable, surveillable money by any means necessary. So if you won't do it because you're like, oh yeah, this is a way I'm going to use JP Morgan coin and beat the Fed CBDC. If you're not going to get suckered into that, then, it seems like they'll use destabilization and desperation as a way to get people to onboard into the systems that they're creating. They're not just going to spend billions of dollars creating these systems and have no one use them. They're going to try and use either, desperation created by public sector policies or by private sector policies, and then have, sort of like 2008. Oh, look, the private banks have destroyed the economy. Now we need the public sector to come in and rein them in, even though Obama's cabinet that was supposed to be doing that was literally chosen by Citigroup, right? They're the ones that are going to come in and they're going to rein these in, and these are the policies and changes that need to be made. But actually, it's the bankers that wrote the changes that need to be made, right? So we're likely going to get set up for something like that, where they're going to try and make like existing money worthless. And if you want your money to be worth anything and maintain any sort of semblance of purchasing power, you have to use financial products X, Y, and Z. And they're all going to be programmable and surveillable, if not by the private sector, by the public sector. And they're all going to be interoperable. They're going to be all these different wallets and digital ID systems that look like they're different companies, but they're all the same, essentially, in terms that they can export all their data to the same central global database. And, that's essentially the goal here. So how do we fight against that? Don't use the database, don't use the digital wallet, don't use the digital ID, don't interact with the system. And I think also, I think Bitcoin is obviously very key to their plans, but they need Bitcoin to stay, as Larry Fink said, a technology for asset storage. They refuse to have it be a currency. And actually, Jeffrey Epstein gave an interview about Bitcoin that I didn't know about until maybe a couple months ago when we started researching this. Yep. Oh, yes. There's a lot of people in the Bitcoin media space that will never talk about this or what you just mentioned. And I think a lot of that is because a lot of money and effort has been put into specifically homogenizing media discourse in the Bitcoin space, because they want Bitcoiners as much as possible to be compliant, while Larry Fink and his ilk do what they want with Bitcoin and make it what they want it to be, so that people are content with number grow up and sort of the Sailor-esque talking points that have gotten a lot of, a lot of people have heard those versus what you just mentioned, from example. There needs to be a cultural shift in Bitcoin in the opposite direction of what this Diego guy from Rootstock said, where he's like, we need to drop the whole, stop fiscal irresponsibility of the banks and central banks, and, be a challenge and threat to their power. We have to drop that if we want to get rich. I mean, that's the mentality there. And I feel like the sailor mentality really isn't that different from that. We have to push people in the other direction, because if we go in the direction they're pushing those, people to go in, people that want to drop the ethos or whatever and make Bitcoin just a tool for Wall Street. No. If we let that happen, very bad things happen. And there has to be a fight. And there's a specific effort that's been launched against people that hold Bitcoin to try and get them to be compliant in that sense. And that's through, controlling the discourse in the media space. There needs to be a desire among Bitcoiners to return to the original ethos, not the opposite. There needs to be a fight for that. People need to care about that again.
So you heard her again that Whitney Webb is sounding the alarm on BlackRock's entry into the Bitcoin space. Far from a simple investment move, Webb sees this as a calculated step in a larger, more ominous plan. Webb argues this is no mere capitulation to market forces, but a strategic maneuver to control what they couldn't destroy. She believes this is the endgame, as by accumulating vast amounts of Bitcoin, these financial giants aim to centralize a decentralized system, effectively neutering its revolutionary potential. Webb connects BlackRock's Bitcoin strategy to the broader agenda of the World Economic Forum's Fourth Industrial Revolution. This vision, championed by figures like Klaus Schwab, promises technological integration but may deliver unprecedented control. Webb cautions against trusting tech billionaires who present themselves as champions of freedom, as they often maintain close ties with governments while criticizing them publicly. Their decentralization efforts may be veiled attempts at consolidating power. According to Webb, we're witnessing the death throes of the Bretton Woods system. The emerging order, built on blockchain technology, promises efficiency but threatens privacy and autonomy. Environmental concerns are being weaponized to justify sweeping changes to the financial system, with BlackRock positioning itself as a key player. Webb argues that the Bitcoin community faces a crucial decision, which is their fight to preserve Bitcoin as a tool for financial freedom and allow it to become a mechanism for unprecedented financial control. As we stand at this pivotal moment, Webb urges us to question the motives behind institutional Bitcoin adoption, remain vigilant against attempts to centralize control, and actively work to preserve the original vision of Bitcoin. In conclusion, Whitney Webb's warnings paint a picture of a world where financial freedom is under threat from the very institutions claiming to embrace it. As Bitcoin enters this new era, the choices we make now will shape the future of finance and personal liberty for generations to come. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.